less than 24 hours, Georgians will be under a shelter-in-place order.
McDonald, though, said he did not know the man was handcuffed and was trying to use his foot to pin him to the ground so he could be handcuffed.
If your friends, neighbors, or local organizations are not complying, report them to us.
Howdy, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Free Georgia podcast. My name is Jake Green. Man, do we have a lot of news coming out this past week. It has been a crapshoot of information, protests, riots, violence, peace, all of it. And we are not going to get into it. That's right. We're not going to talk about Roe v. Wade on this podcast. I don't think that it's an appropriate thing to talk about on this particular podcast because there are good libertarian arguments on both sides of the abortion debate. And while I do have my own personal stance, which you can find on Twitter, Instagram, yada, 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 I don't think that this podcast should offer up any kind of stance other than just show some compassion, folks. Like, don't rail on people for having one opinion. Both sides have actually legitimate arguments, and there's just no reason to spew hatred or anything like that towards anybody on the other side of this debate, even if they're spewing hatred at you. Fight hate with love, y'all. Two gun things happened this past week, which I'm sure we'll get into here in a little bit. One good, one terrible. But the majority of our time today is going to be focused on the governor candidate here in Georgia, Mr. Shane Hazel. We're going to be interviewing him and talking to him primarily about Bitcoin, as well as some other things with his campaign. But today we're going to focus on Bitcoin since it is crypto month here at the LP. So let's get to it. All right, folks, I now have Shane Hazel on the line. He is running for governor of Georgia. Some people are calling him the Bitcoin governor, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Shane, welcome to the Free Georgia podcast.
Mr. Green, good to be with you. This is awesome, man. I mean, the fact that you got a podcast now and like now that we get to like go back and forth in the state of Georgia, we are effectively, I say multiplying. I know this has been around for a while, but I think now with messaging and everything else that's coming into more of a Ron Paul revolution type of manifestation, man. I'm excited.
Nice. Yeah, I love it. Full disclosure, I am shooting a documentary about Shane's run for governor, so we've gotten to know each other fairly well over the last year.
Taking fire together. I mean, we are brothers for life now.
Yes, we have. This interview won't at all be biased, like at all. It won't feel like purely one-sided. I'm just kidding. It's going to be slightly biased. Well, before we get into the Bitcoin stuff, why don't we talk about a couple of the gun crap that happened last week?
The good
half good,
stuff,
half
right?
bad.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it was half and half, mixed bag. Why don't we talk about the SCOTUS deal first, their New York ruling?
Yeah, I thought it was, absolutely awesome. I mean, the fact that we've got the Supreme Court that just came out and I guess kind of just put their thumb down a little bit on this idea that obviously you have the right to carry, right? Like that's it. Like that's what they said. They said you have the right to carry on your person outside of your home, which I don't know. In what world in America, like, yeah, I mean, anybody looking outside of America would go, yeah, of course, those guys run around with 6 shooters on their hips all the time, right? Like that's just the law, but that's not been the law, right? And so for the Supreme Court to come in and push an opinion for in favor of the gun crowd and for people to arm themselves outside of the home, it's just like, yeah, man, this seems right. It seems what America should be all about. It's what I was told it was all about when I was a kid. And now finally there's a little bit of reflection for that. So, the guys in Chicago, New York, Detroit, all over California and the West Coast and any other progressive city. And let's face it, they're popping up all over the place. Man, I'll tell you what, criminals may be thinking a little more diligently about who they're going after in some of these neighborhoods, and rightly so, man. I mean, look at Chicago, for God's sakes. Just, 30 people shot on a weekend on a very normal basis. Like, it's,
yeah, that's average.
Yeah. So good. I'm a big fan of where they're headed with all, the rights of just normal, peaceful people.
Nice. What do you think about the uproar? I mean, it's obviously there with the Roe v. Wade stuff, but also with this particular ruling, that this is not part of the democratic process. This is not the people's voice being heard. What are your thoughts on that?
So
Those people.
obviously it's the same crowd all the time. It's okay one way, but it's not okay the other way. I mean, Roe versus Wade was this way because of the Supreme Court for God knows how many years, right? So it's the same thing with guns. Like, when you're looking at this from I don't know, just a logical point of view, like, well, hey man, the Supreme Court says was this way for this long, and now it's this way for whatever. I don't know. Maybe us as libertarians, maybe we can explain this to people who are new to being libertarian or who are curious about libertarian ideas, right? Is like, we kind of see this whole thing as a disaster. The Supreme Court, the Article 3, the Article 2 of the executive, and the Article 1, none of it functions as it normally should. We're not living in a constitutional republic. We're living in a post-constitutional republic. And therefore, I guess the argument now arises, like, if the Supreme Court, let's give the progressives and the left and the Democrats all, like, yeah, you know what? Let's just say they're right. The Supreme Court has lost their mind. They are now an illegitimate organization within inside the government that's run away. They've betrayed their oaths. They've lied under oath to get where they are. Okay, I agree with you. Right. I 100% agree with you. Let's abolish the entire thing. Let's abolish DC. The thing is, they won't meet you there. I think some people are growing to that idea. I think across the country, people are growing to that idea. But it just goes to, to show, I think, everybody that, man, this whole thing is illegitimate. That's what I think people need to start taking away, is this government, especially at the federal level, is absolutely 100% illegitimate. It is not part of its, within its constitutional parameters, right? It's no longer abiding by this piece of parchment, which, let's face it, it hasn't for a couple hundred years now. And it's maybe just time to start thinking about life outside of what you were taught in government indoctrination camps, right? It's like, hey, yeah, maybe we don't need a Supreme Court to tell us what's good and righteous or what's terrible and awful or whatever. Maybe we don't need an executive. Maybe we don't need a useless Congress made up of, the 435 individuals that have sold us out, that have, left and right, Republican and Democrat, put us in $30 trillion worth of debt. And God knows the executive that's put us in, wars around the world, has made us responsible for places like Yemen and kids that are starving. And I don't know, am I allowed to swear on this show? Probably.
I think we're trying to keep it family friendly.
Let's keep it family friendly.
Can you do that?
These young kids, yeah, these young kids. Yeah, and that's the thing, is there are kids in Yemen that are literally starving because the U.S. president won't get hard on places like Saudi Arabia to say enough is enough, right? Like, we're done. The blockades are over. We're going to make sure that these people have at least trade open to them, and charity open to them. So I think the case to be made here is not so much that, oh yeah, Democrats, you're wrong, that these institutions in government have lost quote unquote faith. No, you're exactly right. Now let's push it to the next phase of this. Let's end it. Let's just be done with each other and get a peaceful divorce while we still can.
How do you approach people with that idea? Because the only thing people think about when you talk about secession is civil war. And people get so entrenched on their sides, on their teams, that they tend to fail to see reality. and exactly what you're talking about, how the whole friggin' system is corrupt and problematic and not actually working for anybody except itself. So like, what would be your first approach to, let's just say, a Republican who has no interest in secession, just wants to be a part of these here United States? And how would you do that tactfully? Yeah.
Yeah, America, MAGA, let's go. Right. Like, and I don't want to, like, listen, there are a lot of people from outside of the South that are Republicans that are not MAGA and all. Like, listen, I understand. And, I'm having a little fun at the behalf of how you're, I don't know, kind of portrayed to the nation. Man, I think you got to really take a look at what this nation has become. And it's not that we, I think most people like the idea of America and this really unified, amazing country that can do some things when they all agree and they put their minds to some things and they go, yeah, let's get together and do something awesome. The problem is between the politician, the banking cabal, and the zombie corporations that are out there that exist because of the first two. You've gotten to the point where we are insolvent. We're $30 trillion in debt. There's never, like, we're not going to ever pay it down. I mean, the Republicans going to pay it down? No, they're not. The Democrats going to pay it down? No, they're not. Are the Libertarians going to pay it down if we ever come to power? No, we're definitely going to default. And that's the thing is with that all being said is, like, listen, guys, I think we could be far more effective within our own lives, within our own communities, within states. Maybe, like, it's kind of a dirty word, but it's like the more we decentralize, the more we can put our hands on people that might be in government, whether it's the sheriffs or the mayors or their the state assembly members or whoever it is. Like, we can put our hands on those people and
non-violently, right?
Non-violently. And at that point, we can start to influence what's going on around us. We can start to make sure that our rights are recognized, that, you have all the rights within the Bill of Rights, plus all that are reserved to you under the 9th Amendment. That's the vision, that you're going to force and coerce people to be your countrymen, is really an odd, I don't know, kind of, it's an odd conundrum for an American to even make. Like, you want to force people to be American? No, man, you want people to be American by choice. You want people to say, yeah, you know what, like, this seems like a really good idea. The problem is I think there's a growing number of people that don't think that this is a good idea anymore, that think that, oh man, we are on a suicide pact right now. Our foreign intervention, our foreign policy, our fiscal irresponsibility and just mayhem has kind of led us to a point where the people who are quote unquote elected to office are really just placeholders that get up there before cameras and they argue, and they don't really have any sense of what's the problems in your life. And the problem is they've invaded and infected every facet of it and perverted it to the point where it's politicized, kind of like a bot, where you've got a binary choice, whether it's Republican or Democrat, in terms of the way they are going to address those problems with their solutions. And at the end of the day, that binary action, when we have nuance down to the individual in our society, doesn't make any sense anymore. It's like, you need to be able to solve your own problems, and you need the freedom to do that. And the last thing that government ever does is protect your life, liberty, and freedom. They exist at the expense of your life, liberty, and freedom. And that's I think probably the perfect way to help Republicans in this space understand that you're going to be better off without government. You're going to be better off without that added layer of government, especially when it comes to taxes and everything else.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say the best thing about the United States is the people in it, not the government of it, which would be my favorite argument to use, because when you think of, I don't know, like, I grew up Republican. When you think of the United States, I don't think of the politicians in Washington, D.C. I think of all the people that, across the nation that I've met and love, and have had good times with.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm sure a lot of those people don't agree with you on anything.
Most people don't agree with me on anything.
So is the life of being a libertarian.
Let's talk about the other gun crap that happened last week. A bill landed on Biden's desk that imposes a whole bunch of restrictions. What is your take on some of these deals?
Red flag laws, man. I can't wait to start getting the names and addresses of government agents and stripping them down. Like I'm telling you, like I'm going on the offense, Jake.
You're going to use the red flag laws to your
I'm going to find out
advantage.
who these federal agents are, and I'm going to start calling the authorities on the federal agents. I mean, obviously this is draconian. I don't agree with red flag laws, nor do I want to get anybody hurt. But the thing is these red flag laws, I said it last week, this is going to cost people their lives. In certain places where they go, oh yeah, let's go get them, right? Because it's going to happen. The Northeast, the West Coast, they're going to do this kind of stuff, and they're going to go after people, and they're going to, hey man, this guy's a threat to society based on the fact that he's got a MAGA flag or he's got a Trump flag or whatever. I mean, unfortunately, we've seen this play out. They killed a young man named Duncan Lemp years ago. Came to his door to take his guns because, quote unquote, somebody, I think it was actually a family member, that called in and said he's not only a threat to society, he's a threat to himself or something. And they went and he was like, you're not confiscating my guns. It escalated to the point where, I guess there were shots fired in both directions, and they killed Duncan Lemp.
They shot through the window.
They shot him in his sleep, didn't they?
Yeah, they shot him. He was getting up and got shot, I think.
That's
and his girlfriend was lying in bed next to him.
Yeah. And so, we've seen this play out. We know what's going to happen. And here's the other thing is to all the quote unquote law enforcement that's going to find out the hard way, like, man, Americans are not going to be down right now with gun confiscation in the least. And the red flag laws, obviously push what was left of the Fourth Amendment and the Fifth Amendment out the window. And I guess the right to a speedy trial of your peers also out the window. It's like civil asset forfeiture all over again, man. It's just another way to do it. And now this time it takes your gun. So, I don't know. It's probably going to make its way to the Supreme Court if it's still around by then. And I imagine, I should say Justice Thomas is going to love throwing that back in the face of Joe Biden 30 plus years later, which, I mean, you've seen the memes running around like 30 years later, Clarence Thomas is getting even with Joe Biden. I think it's going to be glorious. But yeah, we've got some major issues right now where there are going to be organizations. I think, I don't think most states are going to be immune to this, type of tyrannical overreach. And I think it's going to cost people their lives, both in law enforcement and, peaceful people in this country.
I agree. I mean, I think the worst thing you can do is try to go after somebody's guns, because the only retaliation is to use those guns.
Right. I mean, in this day and age, it's like, boy, cattle cars seem like they're getting closer and closer. And if they come to your door, oh boy, I think if I leave my guns here and I go unarmed with whoever I need to go with, man, at the end of the day, I don't have the means of resistance anymore as soon as they come there. So I don't know. My thought to everybody is don't ever be extracted from your home. And at this point, you need to understand you are at war. Both, and it's kind of a soft war right now because they haven't said, I guess they haven't said some of the bureaucrats and bureaucracies have labeled some of us radicals, and
what are you talking about?
and obviously have probably put together your social credit scores and everything else, and you should act as if the government in DC especially is a hostile force, and anybody that's coming to your door that's telling you that they're going to confiscate your stuff, I think at this point is also a hostile force.
Yeah, completely agree. Let's talk about your campaign.
Let's talk about it. I got a great committee. I'll tell you what, man, guys that
you have an all right committee.
Show out, man. They're hey, I'll tell you. should we talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's talk about Liberty campaigns for people out there that want to know how to run Liberty campaigns.
Yeah, that's a
People
difficult thing to do.
Yeah, people in the Liberty space, I don't think that are coming to Liberty space from either Democrats or Republicans. You guys think that we've got this built-in apparatus like the Republicans and Democrats. We don't. We are hobbyists. We are political hobbyists, right? Don't want to do any of this kind of stuff. We don't want to be in politics. We want to enjoy our lives and enjoy the people around us and not do any of this. So it's really bad that we're involved. It's also extremely bad when you have people like hermit hillbilly veterans that just want to farm a mountainside, like want to be mountain farmers, right? It's kind of the worst kind of farming you could possibly do. Like that's what this guy wants to do, and he wants to be left alone. When those guys are jumping into races, oh man, the political establishment is in trouble, especially when they're gaining traction, when people are coming to here. So we are broke, right? Like we don't have millions of dollars. We don't have the tons and tons of people in the apparatus. So the fact that we have volunteers show up for this campaign, guys that want to like work in Liberty and make a difference, is critical. It's absolutely, I think, outside of the person that decides to run, right, is like, no, you can run for almost anything at state level in Georgia, right?
Right now.
There's a lot of qualifiers in there, right? So once you get to that point, though, like finding a volunteer base that's got the energy and the bandwidth and believes in a message enough, and maybe even the messenger enough to dedicate part of their life to the fight, to the raising of funds, to pushing out material, to pushing, swag or whatever, all the different aspects of a campaign. You've got the makings of not only a campaign, but a rebellion at this point, which I think is absolutely one of the coolest things in the world, right? Is like, I think my first campaign, I had to hire, my manager and my help. My second campaign, it was 2020. And so like, being out in public, that's not a really cool thing to do anyway. So I just kind of ran a campaign, and now that it's 2022 and people have kind of figured out the game, and we've got, a little bit of name recognition and a pass, I think it is such a telling thing for people to see. Like, this isn't done overnight. This isn't one of those things where you just sign up and, hey, oh yeah, everybody's going to come and support you. Like, that's not the way this kind of stuff works. There's a ton of work that goes into, doing this kind of stuff. And unless you're just, I don't know, one of those people that has got the Midas touch in everything that you do, or is, super rich and you're throwing tons of money behind something like this from the very beginning, it's going to take you busting your butt to get to this point where you can have people show up to support you. And at that point, it's on you to give them anything and everything that they possibly need to give them the best shot and showing up and showing out, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we have a good core group working on your campaign right now. Shout out to Jared Bell and Nick Siselski, the hardest name ever to pronounce. And we've got a few others that are joining on. We've gotten good responses from some email blasts and filling out forms as to who wants to volunteer for certain things.
Dude, I'll tell you right now, and I don't know, it's for you guys Republicans that are out there maybe tuning in too. Debbie Dooley said out loud the other day on a podcast, I've had a conversation with her, but she is now telling everybody in November, you need to vote Libertarian for governor, like Secretary of State. I think the AG position, and possibly even the agricultural, right? Like that's incredible. That's a giant statement.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, yeah, that's something that doesn't happen every election.
Yeah, hardly ever.
It's not every day that Republicans start publicly saying vote Libertarian. So I'd say that that's a big sign of things that are happening in the culture that not everybody is aware of and not everybody can see, but it's going to show up once voting begins in October.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, if they think 115,000 votes last time was a big deal, like they're going to be really pissed this time. Like it's going to be I mean, Brian Kemp is going to be embarrassed. He's going to be absolutely embarrassed. And the thing is at the end of the day, like I hope people just kind of realize that it's all illegitimate. Like I hope that that's the message at the end of this whole thing. It's just like the Dominion voting machines, the way they do this, what Stacey does with what fair fight and all that kind of stuff is just, it's all nonsense, right? Like they don't want us on the ballots. And I'll tell you, what the funny thing is Debbie's got some pretty high hopes of 20% for libertarians, right? And she said this, the other day, she said, if you guys get 20%, you guys are on all ballots across the state, up and down the ballot. So you're not just running for statewide races. And I was just like, whoa, yeah, that's a jump, man. Because I was hoping, let's aim for 10% this time, right? Like we got a little more name recognition and all that kind of stuff. But if we've got like big organizations like the Tea Party and other organizations coming in from even the Democratic side, man, that is a giant proposition for what we're doing.
Nice. Yeah, I know for a fact we're getting some Democrats switching over as well because I know some of them. Well, let's talk about your campaign messaging for a bit.
Sure.
It's literally on your T-shirt.
It's on.
We got Bitcoin, something
Cannabis.
about drugs, guns,
and nuclear, baby.
and nuclear. Let's start with nuclear and work our way over. That way we can talk about Bitcoin for a while.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the grid, not only in the United States, but obviously here in Georgia. Georgia is part of the eastern grid in the United States. There's 3 grids. And one of them's Texas alone. The other one's everything west of the Mississippi. It's archaic. We've got a really terrible system right now. On the other side is, energy is not cheap right now with inflation, with the slowdown of all of the oil around the planet being refined, everything else. Like it makes things expensive. When energy is cheap, humans flourish because they have the energy to do what they need to do, whether it is live their lives, go to work, production, you name it. Cheap energy makes living expenses cheaper. So if we can create cheaper energy through nuclear, which is really about the most sustainable, clean energy on the planet, and I know people are scared of this, so maybe we can talk about it a little bit.
Well, people are just scared of the name.
Yeah,
That's
the advancements that have been made in nuclear energy up till 2022 are absolutely unbelievable. So there are small nuclear companies out there, and I say small nuclear companies. What they do is they create small nuclear plants that are portable, about the size of a bus or two. And those things can be up and running in a neighborhood or in a bad situation. Like let's just say a hurricane comes through or something, and you need to create power for a community and get it back up. These small nuclear facilities that are mobile can be moved around just for those reasons. So there's no reason on earth that we shouldn't be taking advantage of this and decentralizing power down to possibly neighborhood size units where the people that use it pay for it and it's super cheap. We can run, not only our homes and our businesses and cars off of it, but now what we're looking at is running industry off of it as well. And when we can do all of these things, we've got a path to a much stronger, stable society. And I don't think that, people like Brian Kemp or Stacey Abrams is entertaining anything along those lines whatsoever. Not to mention, I don't think they have the backbone to stand up to the IAEA, the International Atomic Association, I think, or whatever it is, that will want to invade our state. And say you can do this or you can't do this because those guys are co-opted by the people that own giant energy companies. So it's a matter of kind of giving the middle finger to the giant energy corporations out there, putting nuclear on where we can, going. And I'll say this, it's in all of the above. Like if we can be up here in the North Georgia mountains where we can create more clean hydro type of, energy, great. If we can do it with nuclear, down south further, amazing. But it's time to start thinking about how do we make energy extremely cheap, so that we can be a prosperous, stable civilization going forward.
Yeah, that's something people don't really take into consideration is they pretty much only think of energy as like what powers your home. Whereas for this particular, for nuclear, and I guess everything right now, actually, like it spans way more than just powering your home. It For those of us who have electric cars, it charges our cars. It influences your life so much that you just don't even realize how much it is. I read a study the other day that said nuclear power is 30 to 40 times cleaner than solar or wind. And there's actually a whole bunch of information out there on why solar energy is not the ideal solution. That in fact, nuclear and hydro are much more effective because they run 24/7, whereas solar, you have to store it. Wind, you have to store it, and the wind has to be going. Obviously, if we can get away from coal, natural gas, all that, that'd be great. But people pushing like only solar and only wind are not looking at the big picture or just lying to you outright.
Yeah, and to your point, with the energy sources that create DC energy versus AC energy, this is a big thing, right? So nuclear creates AC energy, as does hydro, natural gas, anything petroleum based or carbon based is going to create AC power, whereas your wind power, your solar power, and even sometimes your hydropower at sea is all DC, which means it has to be stored in a battery, which means it's got to be dug up from the earth somewhere where you're going to disturb a natural habitat, most likely. Then you're going to have to probably use petrol type of machinery to extract it, to clean it up, to get it to market. And we're not talking like small machinery. We're talking gigantic machinery that runs on petrol. The kind of the eye pencil experiment here, right? Now you're talking about not only the wind or energy source like a solar panel being created and manufactured, and the quote unquote footprint, the carbon footprint that it creates just doing those things, but now you're storing it somewhere in these giant batteries. And when you kind of take a look at this, and then the maintenance on top of it, where you're doing maintenance on giant windmills, you're doing it with giant cranes, you're doing it with giant petrol trucks, and the thing is I think in terms of how long they last, being from Michigan, there's a lot of windmills in Michigan, and these things get changed out every 5 to 10 years. So to look at the footprint of what it costs to take something from the earth, create it, manufacture it, get it online, the carbon footprint is absolutely huge compared to extracting it out of the earth, putting it through a refinery, and taking it to the market, right? And I think we also got to start looking at the idea that carbon isn't a bad thing. We're carbon-based life forms, right? Like, I don't want pollution, I don't want bad air quality and all that other kind of stuff, but we need to start looking at the creation of energy is exactly what we need, to do as best as possible. But at the end of the day, carbon dioxide is plant food, people. Like, when we look at Earth, possibly warming up, like, I'm kind of excited to see what's underneath the Antarctica, ice sheet, right? Like, I don't really, Florida's Florida, if they covered that place up with some water, who cares? But it's not happening, right? And I guess I probably should shut up on this rant, but at the same time, it's just there's so much extra that goes into creating DC type of energy versus AC type of energy that, I mean, at the end of the day, you're probably way better off just going with the petrol or going with the coal or the natural gas, and definitely the nuclear and the hydro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we could spend an entire episode just on nuclear energy, but let's move on to the next one. All right, so the next plank on your campaign is guns. What about guns?
I just, yes. Yes,
Just guns. Yes, guns.
I think the thing to understand here is, as the executive, I'm just going to make sure that everybody understands, like, as the executives in Georgia, you're no longer prosecuting anybody for any type of gun ownership, period. The ATF, we're going to run those guys out of Georgia. First and foremost, the NFA and every other gun law that is on the books is going to be effectively nullified if I'm governor. And I think that's the most beautiful thing. Have you ever had to think of a governor just come out and be like, hey, man, all you peaceful people out there, own whatever guns you want. I don't care. If you're not killing people, robbing people, if you're not doing assault and rape and kidnapping or vandalism, like, or brandishing, like, I don't care. Own whatever guns you want. You're a quote unquote a legal adult. That's the thing, is if this country is going to make you sign up for a draft to possibly go over and do violence against other people as a 17 or 18-year-old, then you have every right in the world to protect yourself, your property, your life, your rights, you name it, man. And so that's my thing, is I don't care what you own in terms of guns, but I will issue the warning that if you're doing violence to other people in any way, shape, or form, oh man, the hammer that is going to come to you from not only your local but your state organizations, it's going to be really, really bad for you violent people. Like, it's going to be super bad. And that includes you if you're the government. If you're doing bad things in the government and hiding behind badge and blue lines and all that stuff, oh man, it's going to be double worse. Like, right? This is going to be the I think this is, it's going to rewrite the book on how governors approach the Second Amendment and your right to, your life, liberty, and property.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I've been talking to my wife about how I believe that cops should be prosecuted worse for hurting a civilian than a civilian for hurting a cop.
That civil asset force, or was the qualified immunity. I'm sorry, qualified immunity. Oh, yeah. That stuff's gone. Garbage. Sorry. You're going to be under the scrutiny and subject to double the punishment, I think.
Love it. All right. Next up, cannabis.
Hemp, more fuel, more materials. And here's the other thing is, like, man, there's farmers all over Georgia. This is our number one industry is agriculture. Grow whatever you want. I'm not telling you grow hemp. I'm telling you, you have the freedom outside of the federal government now here in Georgia to grow whatever you want. If that means you want to grow hemp and you want to sell hemp, you want to, put up, all sorts of industry around hemp, let's talk about that. You obviously have the right. This is a plant. It's from Earth. And for all the people here in the Bible Belt, you can check out, I think it's Genesis 29, right? Genesis 29, all the seed of the earth are here for you. This is, I think, quintessential to freedom. We've got to start looking at what nature has given us. I mean, throughout the centuries, people have utilized anything and everything they can underneath the sun that the earth will produce to create and squeak out livings on this planet, or to commune with a greater power, or to, I don't know, possibly build their homes or fuel their vehicles. We have this really amazing plant that we can grow double bumper crops every year of, that will support the production of biodiesel to the point where we can fuel every diesel engine on Earth for the entire year and then some. So to deprive the Georgia economy, the Georgia people, of this natural inheritance to where they live, this farming, this agriculture, these building supplies, medicine, you name it. It's like tying both of their hands behind their back and making them compete with the rest of the world, like places like Saudi Arabia or other places in the Middle East, where you've got oil that literally oozes out of the ground, right? Is like all they got to do is go take it over to the refinery, refine it, and ship it out. And now, they're living off of, what are we paying? Like $6 a gallon right now for diesel, $4 and some change, $4.50 for gas. Like, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we producing all this stuff here locally? I know there's problems with biodiesel, but in smaller batch type production, where if certain farms are making their own biodiesel, they're running their tractors, maybe they're filling it up because biodiesel is probably best made in smaller batches. You start to look at it like maybe it's more like brewing, right? Like, hey, you know what? These guys are actually really, really good at this in small batches, and we can start, doing it here. And that's the thing is we have to start I'm not saying we have to give Georgians an advantage, but what we should do is at least take the binds off of them, let them do all these kind of things. And, for the people that are looking at, this as, kind of a quote clean green, there's nothing you can plant that's better for the environment than, cannabis and hemp, right? Like you can grow multiple crops. It reintroduces nitrogen into the soil. You can plow over a lot of the things that are just left on the field for sweetening the soil up. I mean, for livestock, for building materials, you name it. This is one of those things where we should absolutely, as a governor, I think I've put it out there, Executive Order 420. We're going to nullify all the abolition that the state and the feds have put on nature. And that's it. I mean, and again, if you're violating these things and you're going after people and you're part of the state or you're part of the government, it's going to be really tough times for you.
Hashtag legalize nature.
There you go.
Yeah, that'd be a good one for your campaign. All right, now let's get into the big ticket item for the night, which is Bitcoin. We had a Bitcoin event about, I guess it was a week ago, a little over a week.
Yep.
It was technically a crypto and Bitcoin event, which I know you didn't enjoy the first word of that, but tell people why Bitcoin and not crypto.
All right. So crypto is noise compared to Bitcoin. Crypto is what I think a lot of people want you looking at that are afraid of what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is a communications protocol. It is immutable. It is decentralized. It has an open ledger, which is the Bitcoin blockchain. These are not synonymous with other cryptos. Most other cryptos are a lot like your central banking system, where they are centralized, where a board or a few very, wealthy whales may have a vested interest and control the code. But outside of that, they can still have a blockchain, and that blockchain can be centrally controlled, whereas Bitcoin never will. Bitcoin is emancipation money. It is a cash-to-cash system that nobody outside of you and the person you want to transact with has any right to, any purview to. And when, I guess, if anybody from a state or a private, person ever wanted to take this from you by force, they can't. So it destroys the incentive to force, which obviously libertarians are all about. So think about keeping all the money you earn all the time and only spending it on the things that you can, that you consent to spend them on. Outside of that, why Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a mathematical certainty. In terms of what it is 21 million Bitcoin. It is 100 million Satoshis per Bitcoin, which I believe leaves us at about 21 trillion. At any rate, it scales.
What's a Satoshi for those who don't know?
A Satoshi is like a cent to a dollar. Where there's 100 cents to a dollar, there are 100 million Satoshis or sats to a Bitcoin. And this is a subject that I think people really need to invest in their own learning. You need to take charge of understanding economics. What this does in terms of the libertarian space, the Austrian space, we talk about these things a lot within the libertarian and Austrian circles. Austrian economy is not something that I think even most libertarians understand. I think there are, people who are new especially don't understand it. But we live in a Keynesian economy and a Keynesian world for that matter right now, where centralization of banks have control over everything that you have ever earned. And day by day by day, they use all of these different factors to strip you of those things like inflation. So when we talk about hard money versus easy money, hard money is things like gold and silver. It is rare. It is not something that you can replicate. It is transferable from one person to another. And outside of being centralized in the banks, it's actually pretty good in terms of communicating value to a economic system. However, neither silver nor gold is anywhere near as hard as Bitcoin by the same Austrian principles. I think it was Charles Menger, right? The Austrian economist that talked about salability over time and space and scales that makes money hard. And obviously he coined this term, this understanding of hard money long before Bitcoin, really mostly around gold and silver. And when we look at the salability or the liquidity aspect of Bitcoin, we actually find out that it is harder than both gold and silver. So if there's 21 million Bitcoin forever, it means it's not only inflation proof, but it's deflationary money. Just having the money, it will appreciate over time. And that is a better store of your work and your contribution to the economy over time. So as you age, that contribution, that money that you received earlier than the next generation is going to age well. It is going to keep every bit of energy that you put in to the economy, not only perfectly, but better than perfectly, as it obviously is worth more over time. The fact that there's only 21 million Bitcoin means that the 54 million millionaires on Earth won't actually all own a Bitcoin. That's how rare it is. And that's how early it is, how few people that really understand it. Is it saleable or liquid over space, which means can it be transported easily from one person to another around the globe? And gold, not so much. Maybe a little here and there in your pockets, but the larger the amount of gold, the more security it needs, the more transport it needs, all of these things. And it doesn't really satisfy as well the principle of being saleable over space as Bitcoin, especially now that there's a Lightning network. You can do automatic remittance for Bitcoin now around the globe in seconds on the Lightning network. So you are going peer to peer, and it doesn't matter which denomination of currency or fiat that you're using. You can go between Bitcoin and fiat anywhere in the world instantaneously on the Lightning network right now. And there's QR codes in places like the unbanked, like in the Republic of Africa, Central Africa, in El Salvador, in places like I think Guatemala is going to be coming online pretty soon. But around the world where people have not had the ability to have a bank or have money that's sustainable, that keeps its worth, they're now trading in Bitcoin. And so the fact that we can answer the two first, sail over time and then space, leaves scales. And like we were talking about earlier, being liquid over scales. Can this money be money for the entire population? There's a lot of people who are like, there's only 21 million Bitcoin, Shane. And I say, yes, there are only 21 million Bitcoin. But as most people will never own a Bitcoin, you have the 100 million Satoshis for every Bitcoin that's out there. So can you own Satoshis? Of course you can. And when you look at the breakdown, I think the breakdown on Earth is if, let's just say the entire population of Earth adopted Bitcoin right now and it all averaged out. I think the average, if you had everybody owning the same amount, somewhere around 4,900, Satoshis or something like that. And I could be a little off of my figures, but it's not much. I think $1 buys about that much Satoshi right now. So to think about how, Bitcoin scales, like Bitcoin scales to every person on Earth. And the people that are early to it, man, it is going to be generational wealth for a very, very long time if you're smart with it.
Yeah, it's like discovering a gold mine back in the days before mining began.
Yeah. Might
Yeah.
want to talk about just Keynesian versus Austrian type of economy for a second, so that they understand a little bit more, maybe.
I'm a fan of that. It might also put people to sleep.
Okay, fine.
No, but we can get into that for a second because it's a huge difference in principles and why one works and one doesn't, and why the U.S. is in the state that it is right now compared to if we were on an Austrian model.
Yeah.
So yeah, dive into that real
I
quick.
mean, really, really quick. Saving, like Keynesian is a spending-based economy versus in a debt-based spending and debt-based economy versus Austrian, which is a savings-based economy. Growing up, everybody's like, you got to save for tomorrow. You got to put away this immediate gratification. You put that kind of stuff away. What we call low time preference versus high time preference, and this economic model drives so much culture when we talk about things like the culture war in the United States and things like that. So if you are a debt-based society, you always owe the central banks whatever money you have in your bank accounts. It's all debt, right? It's just everything that you ever had is a debt to an organization that you've never met that's pretty evil over history, versus this low time preference where if you are an Austrian, whether it's gold or silver or Bitcoin, what you're doing is you're putting away what you've earned today for tomorrow, so that when you need something, maybe somebody needs a loan, you actually have the money to loan out. And what this low time preference does is it stops people searching on how or what casinos to put their money in to make more money, or to make sure that their money doesn't decrease over time, because that's what happens with the Keynesian type of economies, is like you're always trying to find whatever's the best way to store your wealth so it doesn't get eroded. And let's face it, Wall Street and the bailouts that have happened, the rich get richer, right? The people who are closer to money get richer. That doesn't happen in an Austrian economy. It's actually why Bitcoin was designed, because the people that were getting fleeced got tired of being fleeced, and they said, hey, let's create a money that doesn't have a state. It doesn't have rulers. It is absolutely out of the control and the purview of all these people who have taken advantage of it. And I think it's, one of the coolest things, because once you begin to be more of a savings-based culture, what you're now doing is introducing principles that have been lost or perverted through the spending and debt economies that we have, right? It's like you got to spend it right now to make sure that you get everything that it's worth, so that it's not worth less tomorrow. And that is obviously, if you're saving for something for a rainy day and you've got low time preference, whether it's, family based, whether it's, your neighborhood, whatever it is, the ability to save the energy that you've put into life to either push into tomorrow to make tomorrow easier, or to maybe make tomorrow somebody else's life easier, is a giant departure from the system we're obviously in now.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're describing is patience. Just have a little patience. That's just a easier word for people to understand than low time preference. High time preference is like spontaneous. What's another one? Irresponsible, maybe. Low time preference, definitely patience and like forward thinking, thinking into the future and preparing for that. How would you implement Bitcoin as governor? Like, what would you do to make that a thing here in Georgia?
So we're sitting on a spring, and that's the thing, is this economy is a spring-loaded trap right now. It's going to crash, and it is crashing. I think people have kind of seen, we've seen stocks, we've seen other like quote unquote other cryptos absolutely get destroyed because they're not based in and in economic reality. So as the governor of Georgia, what you have to do is come out and tell everybody, listen, we're not going to ever, you know, go after anybody who creates new money, right? I don't care if you want to mess with crypto, fine, go mess with crypto. But we're not going to set up any type of legal system that will go after Bitcoin miners. We're not going to go after anybody that's trading in Bitcoin. We're not going to go after anybody who's investing in Bitcoin. We're not going to use the executive office in any way whatsoever that either encroaches or destroys your ability to trade in whatever currency you want to trade in. Because obviously, as libertarians, we think that you first and foremost should be making all of your decisions from a consentful place. And outside of that, that the market breeds the best competition so that you get the best product at the lowest prices. And at the end of the day, I mean, if we've got, you know, the separation of you know, money and state, that's what we're looking for. We don't want control from the governor's office or from a federal, you know, bureaucracy or an international banking cabal, for that matter, telling us how we have to transact with each other, right? And that's basically, as the governor, you just create an environment that's free so that people can transact whichever way they want to transact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So we were talking about, I remember when I was up at your place last time with the rest of your campaign team, we were talking about how Bitcoin might be an effective payment method within the government, and basically to set up verified accounts, Bitcoin accounts, for each government employee, government whatever, branch, whatever it is, department, so that anybody in the public can go and see where all the money goes. Is that something that you would be interested in actually implementing?
Yeah, first, I think we're going to have a lot less government employees and a lot less bureaucratic departments. I think being able to track every expenditure and every you know, Satoshi or dollar received is, you know, one of the things that needs to be on the forefront for people who are funding government. Now, I will say that I think the best way to do this is to create you know, accounts where the public isn't forced and coerced into funding them, but is more of a direct type of, you know, I guess we'll fund this type of thing. And, you know, I obviously kind of have done some research on this in the past. In Europe, they set up these, you know, these government organizations that were funded through kind of quote unquote a direct democracy, where people would either pay for the ones they thought that they really needed or not. And about 99 times out of 100, the people were like, nah, I don't think we're going to pay for those kind of things. So I think it's a really cool experiment to see, you know, exactly what people will pay for and what people will not pay for. And then obviously unleash the private sector to compete with the quote unquote government public sector. And I think that's really where you find the, you know, efficiencies, and give people, or I say give people, that's a terrible way. It's a government indoctrination, I swear. It's leaving people alone with the fruits of their labor, to make sure that we're not taking their money, to make sure that we are protecting their life, liberty, and property, and scaling back the government to really, I don't know, such a tiny point that I hope people realize that they can do much better things and more cooperative things and consensual without government.
I love that. For those of you who don't know much about Bitcoin, haven't dabbled in it, haven't really tried to seek out any information on it, there is a wealth of information out there. We're going to keep talking about it here for a little while, but it is definitely something I would highly recommend looking into. I don't recommend, as I'm sure Shane wouldn't, getting into any crypto that isn't Bitcoin, which I know they're completely different things. Bitcoin is not crypto. Crypto, in my opinion, is basically just stocks. It's just it's just a company that put out a cryptocurrency that does other things to make that crypto valuable. And once that company goes under, so does the stock. And then you're left with nothing. So I'd say crypto in general is more of a stock market, and Bitcoin is more of a store of value for the future, future currency. Yeah, should we talk a little bit maybe about the basics of Bitcoin and how to get into it? Maybe
How to acquire Bitcoin?
yeah, maybe that.
Sure. I'll tell you, I'm a big fan of not doing it through the normal exchanges like Coinbase and the rest of those places that are giant exchanges that you hear about, that are leveraged and sell other, not other cryptos. Right? You know what I was about to say. Man, I'm really good at this. So when I look at these things, first thing you need to know if you're going to get into Bitcoin is this phrase that is, if it's not your keys, it's not your Bitcoin. When I say that, I mean, if you are buying Bitcoin through an exchange, it's just like going out and buying gold in a Roth IRA, right? If you can't touch it, it's not yours. So there are devices that kind of look like a USB drive somewhere. That's where Jake keeps his, right there in the drawer, if you know where he lives.
This is an old one, so but this is basically what it looks like.
Yeah, it looks like a thumb drive.
Yeah, it's let's see. Well,
it's not going to focus on it.
Focus.
Yeah,
Focus. There it is. How about that?
Yeah.
Ledger
is
upside
a
down.
great company.
Ledger's a great company.
Recommend the Nano. What is it? The S that doesn't have the Bluetooth.
Yeah, this is the S. The only way to interact with it is to plug it into your computer.
That's right. So obviously you're cutting down on the threat avenues. So if you want to buy Bitcoin, you can go through exchanges. But what you need to do is get your Bitcoin off of the exchange immediately. One place I would definitely recommend checking out, not only because no matter if your Bitcoin is on their exchange or not, the only thing they deal in is Bitcoin, and that is Swan Bitcoin. They are an absolute great group of guys and girls, for that matter. Just an amazing organization that I know a lot of the people in. And you can not only obviously buy Bitcoin, but you can push it off into your cold wallet, that Ledger Nano S. And once you get to that point, those are yours. You need to have probably a seed word backup somewhere, which is a physical piece of either steel or titanium that is punched with your seed words, and you'll learn all of this kind of stuff. But also on Swan is what they call Canon. The basics of understanding of what Bitcoin is, how to buy it and store it effectively, and really to get you started down this path, this understanding of not only Bitcoin but Austrian economics. And it's a beautiful thing. When you start learning and taking charge of your own money, you become your own bank with Bitcoin. And the guys like I don't know, Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and the rest of these guys that are so highly leveraged and invested in fiat don't want you to do anything with this kind of stuff. And they've talked about, what's funny is they've talked about for a long time the amount of people that are going to be put out of work by technology. Well, the bankers and the stock market and the hedge fund managers and the rest of these guys who have made a living ripping people off from their money, their IRAs, their insurance, you name it. This is all going to change because you are going to become your own bank with Bitcoin. And I think that's probably one of the most glorifying pieces about it. It's just, at the end of the day, if you understand money and you understand your money and nobody can take it and it is locked up, man, what an amazing, what an amazing interaction in terms of a progression in the human species. And I don't say this lightly, as I really think like Bitcoin is one of those inventions that is going to propel the human species, much like fire or the wheel or electricity, like the internet. I mean, it is way, way, way up there in terms of contributions to the human species.
Oh, heck yeah. And you were talking about use it as a store of wealth for the future. And when it is in your wallet, your keys, your Bitcoin, comparing that to, okay, let's say you're looking at your wallet. Okay. You're looking at the digital readout of your wallet. It tells you exactly how many Bitcoin you have. Those Bitcoin are in your wallet. Like, they're in there and no one can touch them. No one can do anything with them. They're there. They're yours. When you're looking at your bank account and it says a certain number, none of those dollars are actually in your bank account. They're just numbers on a screen that were printed, typed, whatever.
Let's make it more simple.
Okay.
Right. The US dollar, the US Treasury, and the Federal Reserve really kind of came up with the first crypto. The first crypto being the US dollar. It is basically a digital dollar. I think maybe less than 1/3 of the dollars that are quote unquote in existence are actually physical, and maybe far less than that actually. So if you really want to understand what crypto is, the US dollar is crypto. The US dollar is essentially controlled, backed by nothing, whether digitized or worthless paper. It is really kind of the first crypto. And so it is not a distributed ledger. It's never been audited. You can't see who the players are in any of it, right? And the tomfoolery that goes on with market manipulation. That bank account that you have, wait till they go to CBDCs, central bank digital dollar, or CBDCs, central bank digital currency. When they flip the switch, and they'll just flip the switch one night, and they may even do it at a global level where they say, man, America didn't manage their debt very well. And so because they didn't manage their debt very well, and they sent the entire world into a tizzy when their economy collapsed, this power cannot be left with countries anymore. It has to be with the global elite bankers, right? Like, this is something that I think is extremely possible. And as soon as that happens, the social credit score that you guys have, that is very much functioning and alive in China, is very much alive behind the scenes here in America, thanks to things like social media. So is whoever you're associating with, whatever you're doing online, everything else, man, you've already got a social credit score. And when they flip that switch on your bank account and they say, hey, listen, for now, that's still all your money, but you can't spend it on some things: travel, weapons, maybe some food, because maybe you're overweight, maybe you're diabetic, maybe you've got health concerns, maybe whatever it is they don't like about you. Now, here's the other thing: is maybe you're not such a bad person, but maybe you associate with bad people. Oh man, well, now your social credit score is going to tank as well, and they're going to start restricting you on a number of things in your life and what you can and cannot spend money. This is going to happen, and that's the thing is, Jerome Powell, who is the Fed chair, has already come out and said we are ramping this up into basically hyperdrive right now. The white paper is out, and we're studying what a crypto US dollar would do. Well, hey guys, newsflash, it's already a crypto dollar.
Yeah, I mean, he announced all this last week.
Everybody the amazingly bad news all at once, but it's kind of we're already there, people. It's what are you going to do about it? You got a little bit of time left to where before they flip the switch that you can get your dollars into a very, very hard asset.
Yeah, I mean, he was talking about that about 10 days ago.
Yep.
They've released the white paper. They started looking into it, and I mean, this topic gets me super fired up, and I could go off on like 15 different tangents, and I want to, but I think we should stay focused on Bitcoin. Maybe a few more minutes, because I know you have another show to do tonight on Fox. I don't know. What other stuff do you want to talk about with Bitcoin? What do people need to know?
I think one of the things that probably wrap up with, and I think this is probably the coolest aspect of the Bitcoin family. And I say family because I didn't realize what it was until I actually met the people who were in the industry, the knowledge, the people who are absolutely changing the game. I went down to Miami this year for the Bitcoin conference, and the Bitcoin conference is host to not only Bitcoin but also a bunch of other cryptos. And I think this is their advantage is you won't see the Bitcoin community show up at crypto conferences. You'll see the crypto community show up at Bitcoin conferences. And kind of the differences in terms of culture. If you look at crypto, a lot of times what you see is, this casino, this place where people want to get rich, they want to bet their money, and they want the Lambos, and they want the strippers, and they want the drugs, and all the things that low, or I should say high time preference people are doing already. They're pushing the limit. They're trying to find what's hot now, and they're gonna make that money and be done with the 9 to 5 part of life. They're going to live big from now on. Versus the Bitcoin community. The Bitcoin community is not the Lambos. It's not the mansions. It's not the ridiculous parties and boats and just all the high time preference nonsense that goes on with the rest of the cryptos. This Bitcoin community is extremely smart. It's extremely young. And it sees the future through savings, and it sees it through helping others understand what it is so that it can grow, so that the market cap grows, so that sooner than later we hit what's called Bitcoin hyperinization, right? So, or hyper Bitcoinization. And when they get people in that space and they help them understand, hey, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. Let's do this safely. Let's do this responsibly. Don't put in more than you can possibly see, take a 40 or 50, percent decrease, right? Like, we're not here to withdraw our Bitcoin for useless fiat money. We're here to stack generational wealth for the future. We're here to take it out of this gigantic Ponzi scheme that is the Fed. It's such a family environment that, I mean, the guys that I knew from Twitter Spaces, Cafe Bitcoin, which is run by Swan Bitcoin, the guys from Toxic Happy Hour, and a whole bunch of the other spaces on Twitter, that people get together and they talk and they go through, not only the cultural side of this, the economic side of this, the security side of this, all the aspects that you can, so that people are very aware and up to speed on what the latest changes in the community are, what the latest industry is doing, how to get out of your fiat job and possibly into a Bitcoin job, so that you can join the Bitcoin economy and really emancipate yourself from what's going on in the fiat economy. So, like I said, the difference is, kind of the individuals in it to get rich quick versus this family community that's there to teach, that's there to bring you in and help you understand, so that you can take care of your production in this contribution to the world in a very, very safe way that's responsible. It's an amazing community. It's just, I mean, honestly, it was like what I imagine Woodstock would have been without the mud and the muck and the public fornication, and there
had to be some of that in Miami, though.
Further down on South Beach, out there. But like, this part of it, man, just absolutely amazing community, full of family.
That's awesome. Well, folks, if you have any other Bitcoin related questions or just questions about Shane's campaign, you can contact me at podcast@lpgeorgia.com, or you can contact Shane. Shane, tell him where to hit you up.
ShaneHazel.com or radicalpod.com. You can go there. You can see all the shows. You can see the governor's page for now. You can see some merch. You can see the Helios project there. But you can hit me up at shane@shanehazel.com as well if you got questions, if you want to get looped in with this amazing ride that we're taking right now, and in this push for liberties. But Jake, I am tickled to death to see you got a podcast and up and running, man. I'm going to have you on mine so that we can blow it up a little bit here in Georgia. But man, really, I'm humbled to be your second show, your first guest. Man, what a cool experience, and to kind of see all this grow, man. If you guys, like I said, you need anything, you know where to I guess, yeah, you know exactly where to go. Don't tell anybody.
Well, I appreciate that. I thought having you on second episode would be great because only place to go from there is up.
That's right.
All right, folks, we're going to end it right there. This has been the Free Georgia Podcast. Make sure to tune in next week. See ya.